7 years old. I was excited and a little unsettled, obviously too young to understand the significance of the moment, yet I found myself consumed with curiosity. What was all the commotion about? It began when I decided to defy the older kids on the school bus, come out from under my seat, take my coat from over my head, prop up on my knees, and peep over the bottom window sill. Crowds of grown-ups, who my mom later explained were called protesters, lined the streets of South Boston, an Irish Catholic enclave, holding signs, angrily, yelling, pointing, shaking their fists. Who were they talking to? Well, the answer came with an explosive crash of breaking glass from a brick that was hurled through our bus window. You see, it was 1974, my first day of second grade, and the opposition of Boston's desegregation mandate was in full effect. And my bus was routed right through a community historically known for racial hostility. I would ask my mother incessantly about the protesters. I needed to understand. For days I would probe, asking, but why? But why? And with patience, she would say, some people just don't like being around others who are different from them, which only caused more questions because I knew those people had never met me or the other kids on the school bus, yet they had somehow decided they knew exactly who we were and had determined our worth. This became the beginning of my understanding of the disruptive power of narrative. Narratives are the stories that are told to us, and about others. They paint a picture. They put ideas and concepts into understandable context. They're the lens through which we see the world. And whether we recognize it or not, we are often gazing through that lens that was decided by someone else. So this begs the question, are there narratives that have been written about you? By society, by culture, by family, by tradition? Narratives that you've simply accepted? Stories that weren't really yours to begin with, but somehow you've allowed them to shape how you think, what you do, what you dream, what you pursue. I spent nearly almost 3 decades in public relations and representing brands, business, and public figures. That job is to control the narrative. The way it works is we craft stories. Those stories become headlines. Those headlines become thoughts and opinions. Those thoughts and opinions become water cooler talk at the office and heated debate, online debate. That's the momentum of narrative. It impacts us every single day. Now, I believe narratives fall into 3 categories: extreme narratives, subtle narratives, and internal narratives. Extreme narratives, those are the broad, the loud, the headlines. That's the media that we hear every single day. They impact us at scale because of their repetition and their reach. Then there are the subtle narratives. Those are just as powerful, but they speak more quietly. They are couched in societal norms and family traditions and expectations. They say things like, I know you love music, but your dad was a lawyer, as was his dad, as was his dad. It's in your DNA. This is your destiny. While that may have been said in love, it's wrapped in a narrative of limitation. And then there's internal narratives. Internal narratives, those are the stories that we tell to ourselves. That's that inner dialogue. It can be either our greatest advocate or our most dangerous enemy. When cultivated intentionally, it's that voice that says, I can do this. However, if we don't pay attention, it feeds into those other narratives and can have us settling or playing small. A time when I got this wrong was when I launched my PR agency. I read in a leading magazine that making $1 million in your first year is real entrepreneurial success. Goals set. I was committed. I wrote it down. We were going to do it. It was 2007, right before the worst financial crisis in a generation. Yet every quarter, I was measuring against that $1 million benchmark. While lamenting to my accountant, I said, we are failing. And she's like, wait a minute. You're thriving in a recession. You have a talented team. You have a growing roster of clients while other companies are closing their doors or laying people off in droves. You will get there. I had allowed this extreme narrative to become my internal narrative. And instead of owning my actual winning story of success, I was measuring mine by somebody else's definition. This is how narratives work when we aren't paying attention. They don't ask permission. They don't announce themselves. They just slide in and start rearranging how we see ourselves. So how do we fight back? Let's go back to that little girl on the school bus who instinctively knew to refuse the narrative that was literally being hurled at her by protesters. She did what I now call the 4 Bs. The first is to be skeptical. Don't just accept a narrative at face value when you see it and hear it. A major headline, a statistic, well-meaning advice. Apply skepticism first. Be scrutinizing. Ask the questions, the whys, the hows, and why nots. I was 7 years old interrogating my mother. How do they know they don't like us if they've never met us? That was the most sophisticated thing I could have done at that age, really at any age. The third is be willing to reject any narratives that you know are harmful or untrue that don't suit you. And the last is be unrelenting. This is when you are so committed to what you know to be true for you, you refuse to allow someone else's limited vision for you to become a ceiling of your possibility. Now, a time when I applied this process in my life was while attending Alabama State University. I was in pursuit of scholarship money, and so I entered the school pageant with no pageant experience, but I won, which advanced me to the Miss Alabama pageant. I was so excited, but I was astonished to find out that in the 70-year pageant history, Alabama had never had a black winner. Now, the extreme and the subtle narrative said that it would never happen, and everyone that knew what I was doing did not hesitate to tell me Alabama is not going to have a black winner. I was skeptical. I asked the questions, the whys and the hows, and I ultimately rejected their narrative that Alabama could never have a reigning black winner. Well, after 12 relentless attempts over 18 excruciating months, on October 31, 1992, I became the first African American I became the first African American to earn a Miss Alabama title. Crushing that glass ceiling and going on to represent the state at Miss USA not only meant I defied the narrative that it could never happen, but I defied that narrative that I was told at 7 years old that I was not equal or worthy. The most powerful thing controlling us is narrative. Owning our narrative, that's our superpower. So we have to be skeptical, scrutinizing, willing to reject. And we also have to be unrelentingly committed to what we know to be true. What public relations taught me is that the one who holds the narrative, that's the one who holds the control. If you don't own your narrative, I guarantee you someone else will. Thank you.